This is data download for Saturday, November 14th from the NYC Media. So today we're thinking about tech. Here's the quote: "Any sufficient advance in technology is indistinguishable from magic," said Arthur C. Clarke. And it seems like there's a good deal of magic going on these days. OpenAI is singing. That's amazing and complicated. The Guardian writes about collective delusions with QR codes are back, but there's also some artistic, refreshing thinking going on as well. Good morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Rosenbaum, the executive director, there you go, of the NYC Media Lab. And what we try and do on this podcast is literally just take a look at the newsletter, share it with you, talk about it a little bit. If you're watching us live, that's great. We'd love to have you jump into the comments and we'll try and chat a little bit. But we have kind of a fun and I think a little unusual newsletter today. Before I forget, let me go ahead and just remind everybody that if you're listening and you'd like to sign up for the newsletter so you get it in your inbox, then please sign up at nycmedialab.org/newsletters. All right, so we've got a good newsletter today, so let's just jump into it. The first is an article from The Guardian about this question of whether or not AI can and should produce art. And so this is an article, and the headline is, it's the screams of the damned, an eerie AI world of deep fake music. So process that for a minute. We know what deep fakes are visually, but imagine if an artist who's no longer with us has all of their various intonations and lyrical storytelling, musical voices plugged into OpenAI's jukebox project and comes out the other side with fully generated, quote, new songs. And here's how The Guardian explains it. It breaks down the audio signal into a set of lexemes of music, a dictionary, if you like, a three-dimensional layer of time, giving you a set of core fragments that is sufficient to reconstruct the music that was fed in. The graphic, if you're looking at this, is a little creepy. The idea that there is a song produced by Frank Sinatra that he never sang is interesting. And for the Media Lab, I think the question, it raises all kinds of questions. It raises IP questions. It raises questions about artistic integrity. But imagine the same thing, for example, just to take this out a step, with authors. Imagine if you're a reasonably prolific author and you've written 10 novels. And then you get to your later years and then you pass on and someone decides to ingest all your novels into AI and spit out a new novel that has the same writer's voice as your work, but isn't you, and wasn't written by you, and probably doesn't. I mean, it would have to have some different, authorship. It wouldn't be written by Steve Rosenbaum. It would be written by the AI ghost of Steve Rosenbaum. I'm not endorsing this. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, and I don't think any listeners of this podcast should assume that we're saying that the future is going to be either better or worse. I think the real question is, and the one that is, disturbing, puzzling, complicated, is where is the line between human output, original work, and algorithmic output? And just to finish up the article, it says at the end, one in the musical notation and one in the lyrics, and separated in the sound recording, which is what labels are concerned with. And if they're creating simulacrums in AI, you have no legal action to them in terms of copyright and regard sound recording. So I think we're going to put that in the puzzling and disturbing category. But lots of things, as I said at the beginning of the podcast today, are like magic, indistinguishable from magic. So moving on to our next article, the pandemic, it's kind of ironic, ushered in the golden age of QR codes. So, I've never quite gotten QR codes. I've never used them. I've never thought they were particularly cool. But I will tell you that in the last month, I've been to 4 or 5 restaurants that have replaced paper menus or plastic coated menus with QR codes on the table where you can take your phone, scan it, and then read the menu. And by the way, also pay the bill using a QR code so that it's a complete touchless experience. I think anybody's guess whether or not net it makes us safer, although given the rising numbers, particularly in New York over the last week or so, I think anything that makes us safer and less likely to catch COVID is a good thing. But QR codes are definitely on the rise. I don't know what that means exactly, but they are. And I'd be curious for those of you who are listening to the podcast, to just jump into the comments. Have you been using QR codes? Do you think they're relevant and timely, or do they just seem like a blast from the past that's likely to come and go? That being said, I'm seeing a lot of them, and I assume you are too. And this is an article from InsideHook.com, which our friends at the Edge Group found for us and pointed out a trend that we were noticing. So it was a good one. All right, next up. We thought maybe we would try and do a podcast this weekend without anything terribly scary or creepy, but then this came up and we had to kind of put it out there. This is from The Guardian also, and the headline is Facebook, QAnon, and the world's slackening grip on reality. Yeah. I mean, for those of us who've been paying attention to QAnon for a while, it went from being like, oh, come on, seriously, nobody actually believes this crap, to, oh, yeah, actually, people do. And it's not going away. And which actually jumps us remarkably easily into the next article, which is if people are flooding the zone with all of this information, some of which is legitimate and some of which is not, then is the answer an algorithmic solution? So the Boston Globe writes, and this is the headline, "Who am I to decide when algorithms should make important decisions? The people who bear the risk of algorithmic systems should get to determine whether and how they're used." And this is workers for a company called Shipt, SHIPT, which is a grocery delivery platform owned by Target. Didn't know that existed. And they are recently implementing a new algorithm dictating workers' schedules and wages. So we've heard about this before. There was a big hullabaloo a while back with Starbucks algorithmically scheduling workers. And I get it, right? I mean, you're trying to decide whether an individual Starbucks store or an individual Shipt moment in time needs to have 50 employees working in the gig economy at that moment, or whether or not it only needs 30. And so you're trying to balance demand with supply. You don't want to have 3 employees in a Starbucks if it's going to be overrun by customers, but at the same time, you don't want to have 6 employees if it's going to be a Sunday in which the store is going to be empty. That being said, the recipient of this algorithmic wisdom is often the employees that are getting jerked around, their schedules being changed on their payment, their salaries are being changed. So the Globe's article, definitely a good long read, very interesting, and the issue certainly relevant and timely. All right, next. This one's a little bit of a surprise, how Slate is using audio as the foundation for its first-party data strategy. I remember not that long ago thinking of podcasting as not likely to be a business. This was 2 years ago. It seemed more like a hobby. But you're seeing more and more of the podcasting companies get purchased. You're seeing more and more of podcasting being central to how people behave and what kind of data they create. This is a Digiday article written by Max Willens. And I'll just read you the first paragraph. Slate built their foundation on first-party data strategy as its audience ears. The digital news publisher and podcast pioneer has started pushing Slate Select, an ad targeting product that allows advertisers to reach Slate's audience across both its sites and its podcast network using Slate's first-party data. We've talked about data on this podcast before. It's controversial. I think you're seeing data privacy as a rising demand from consumers. That being said, we'll save that for another day. Read the Digiday article. It's in the show notes. Very, very, very interesting. Okay, so now let's move to two slightly less technical and slightly lighter-hearted things. So I don't know how many of you have already watched The Queen's Gambit. There is something to be said for media coming at the right place at the right time. And, I'd love to know the inside story of how Netflix decided that was the moment in time to release a multi-part drama about chess. But if you haven't watched The Queen's Gambit, and I won't give away the end of the series, there's no spoilers in this, but the actress who plays the lead characters is captivating and extraordinary. The mid-century modern fashion and furniture and styling is a trip back in time. The drama, the nail-biting, edge-of-your-seat drama about chess is also fantastic. And just to be blunt, it's not about current politics. It's not about current events. It's far enough in the rearview mirror that even if it is a fiction, it's an incredibly refreshing fiction. And I presume it's made a lot of people pull out and dust off their chessboards. So if you haven't watched The Queen's Gambit, I think if you get to episode 1 and you watch episode 1, you'll be hooked. I don't know of anyone yet who said, I watched episode 1 and I bailed because it wasn't that interesting. So highly recommend. And in terms of podcasts, we went for something a little bit different today. Maybe you'll see a theme here. This is a Stitcher original. LeVar Burton reads, and he's reading the best short fiction handpicked by the best voice in podcasting. For those of you who are feeling the need to reconnect with Reading Rainbow, maybe this is corny. I found this podcast very soothing. Again, trying to get out of election politics, trying to get out of tech politics and get into some other voices in my head. So those are my two non-issue oriented recommendations for this week. And then last but not least, an article from the MIT, from News at MIT, using machine learning to track pandemic's impact on mental health. All right, I'm gonna let that settle in for a minute. The pandemic's impact on mental health. Now, you might wonder, how would machine learning get access to data that it could process in the mental health world? And the answer is it's reading a lot, and it's using machine learning to analyze the text of more than 800,000 Reddit posts. The researchers were able to identify changes in the tone and content of language that people used as the first wave of COVID-19 pandemic progressed from January to April of 2020. Their analysis revealed several key changes in the conversation about mental health, including an overall increase in discussion about anxiety and suicide. This is a great long read. I found it fascinating for a couple of reasons. Because, first of all, the idea that I liked that the algorithm was looking broadly at Reddit rather than diving into right-wing or left-wing or political Reddit verticals, and it was listening for tone and voice. I thought that was really interesting and smart. But I also think one of the things we're going to talk about a lot in this next couple of years is this question of when algorithmic and AI exploration of massive amounts of data is valuable and creates knowledge and wisdom, as opposed to when it's, screwing up people's work schedules. I don't think these are easy questions, and it's part of why the Media Lab likes them, honestly, because they're complicated and because technology can be fantastic, exciting, magical, phrase you're going to hear me use a lot, I guess, but also terrifying and potentially broken. So, if I'd said to you, hey, we want to do a research project with 800,000 Reddit posts, how many people will you need to read them? And what is the research-based review of all of those posts that's going to come up with a result? That would be a very big, very long, very complicated human endeavor, but potentially much more successful. So let me just read just one more paragraph from the MIT article. Quote, "We found that there were natural clusters that emerged related to suicidality and loneliness, and the amount of posts in those clusters more than doubled during the pandemic as compared to the same months of the preceding year, which is a grave concern," said Daniel Lowe, a graduate student in the program of speech and hearing bioscience and technology at Harvard and MIT. And he's the lead author of the study. So that's the newsletter for today. Hope you've subscribed. If you haven't, we'd love to have you as a subscriber. We'd also love to get your feedback about the work that we're doing and the things that we can do in the future. With that, have a good week. We'll be back again next weekend. See ya.